The last night that we are studying in the book of Proverbs for a number of weeks. And one of the things we've noted is the first 9 chapters of Proverbs essentially serve as an overall introduction to the book. They themselves have their own introduction. When we get to chapter 10, the Proverbs of Solomon, a wise son maketh a glad father. We've looked at several ideas pertaining to the book of Proverbs. We'll start on slide 34, gentlemen, if you can put us on that one. We've looked at several ideas pertaining to Proverbs 10, especially focus on relationships, righteousness, and rewards in the first 7 verses. When we get to verse 8, there's a transition to the idea of our words. Verses 1 through 7, we called that the idea of righteousness gives rewards. We get to verse 8, and we're looking at the idea of wisdom guiding words. Commandments, verse 8, the wise in heart will receive them, but a prating fool, the one that just flaps his gabber, the fool's mouth shall lead to his fall. Matter of fact, that idea of a gabber flapper appears again in verse 10, that prating fool that will fall. There's a strong emphasis on the use of the mouth, the use of the tongue, the lips, in verses 8 through 18. What's interesting about that is there are a few of these verses that don't say anything specifically about the mouth or the lips. Yet they have been put together in a series of proverbs that each stand independently, yet they have these couple that seem to pertain to profit mixed right in with them. We'll get to that momentarily. For now, look at verse 11, the mouth of the righteous is a well of life. The violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. There again, we're looking at emphasis on our words. The mouth of the righteous is a well of life. This is a well of life to others. What he has to say is going to be a benefit to others. We spent some time examining that thought last week. But violence covers the mouth of the wicked. It comes back to him. Verse 12, hatred stirreth up strifes. We use the illustration of hatred tending to stir up, rouse, bring about strife last week. Gage stressed something as we were ending, how the word stirreth up actually connects to the idea of awakening. And there's a thought there that's worth considering, if only for a moment. Hatred awakens strife. Is it possible to put strife to rest? Is it possible to take conflict and cause it to subside? The idea is still there, the potential is still there, but the people involved have laid it to rest and decided that it's not going to come between them. But you get just a little bit of hatred in one of them's attitude. And guess what's going to happen? If it's the case that I tend to stir up, or around me tends to be stirred up strife, if it's the case that my comments and my opinion and my gabber flapping and my prating like a fool tends to create problems in the workplace, in the home, or in the church, it might not simply be the case that I lack discretion. It might be the case that I've got a major heart problem. Hatred stirreth up strife. And when my words tend to be the ones in interactions with others that awaken strife, arouse conflict, that shake it until it's wide-eyed and ready to swing, well, guess whose fault that's going to be? And we'll go ahead and I told them slide 34 because I like clicking a little bit. Here we go. We're looking at verses 8 through 21. Wisdom guiding words. The fact of the matter is, if my words are stirring up strife, if what I have to say tends to lead to conflict, if I tend to find the worst way to say it, the least receivable way, the way that will cause others, that tends to contribute to other people overreacting, the problem might not be with the other people. Hatred stirreth up strifes, and it might not just be that I have a poor choice of words. Jesus said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Matthew 12. You ever known someone that described everything in the worst possible way? Every situation that he saw, the way that he would recall it, or what he would have to say about people, or what she would have to say about a challenge, was going to be either the most pessimistic, the most negative, the worst way to describe it. Hatred stirreth up strifes. What comes out of our mouth is going to be a reflection of what's in our hearts. And when what comes out of our mouths is negative, when we always tend to have the most downtrodden, hazy view of any scenario, it's not perspective. It's a heart problem. Will we choose to try to find a positive way to view things? Yes, there are negatives in life, absolutely. But there are some folks for whom it's not glass half full, glass half empty. For some people, the glass is full, but the water's not the right temperature. Hatred stirreth up strifes. How am I looking at life? And is my heart problem stirring up conflict because every situation I describe in the worst possible way? Love covereth all sins. Love isn't going to look at things in the worst possible way. It's not going to ignore sin, but it's going to do what James would describe. If a brother or sister, if any one of you do err from the truth and one convert him, let him know that he which converteth a sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death and shall hide a multitude of sins. James 5:19 and 20. Love covereth all sins. Love doesn't decide, hey, here's a brother who used to have a problem with stewardship, and so we're going to keep bringing that up, and it'll be a point of contention, but I'll sure have my fun with it. Love doesn't decide, hey, I've heard something potentially negative about this fellow, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm going to make sure that I mention it the next time his name comes up in a conversation with some random individual that might have nothing to do with the scenario in consideration. That's not how love operates. Hatred stirs up strife. Love tries to put it to the rudder. Verse 13, in the lips of him that hath understanding wisdom is found. We hit on this verse when last we spoke. Understanding is that Hebrew word being. It's looking at things from multiple perspectives, seeing something from another person's point of view. And when I see things from another person's point of view, wisdom tends to be found. Now keep in mind, in the lips of him that hath understanding, wisdom is found. When I see things from other people's points of view, I tend to have a wiser vocabulary in conversing about whatever topic might need to be considered. When I fail to see things from another's point of view, chances are I'm going to be choosing the wrong words. Question. Hatred stirs up strife. In the lips of him that hath understanding, wisdom is found. When I have understanding, I see something from another person's point of view, and so I'm going to have wiser words. Could it be that the absence of understanding could be the direct result of hatred in the heart? I don't see something from another person's point of view because I don't think his point of view is worth me considering. Has no value. I don't want to look at things from his perspective. When we connect the truths from one proverb to the next, the well of wisdom shows just how deep it really is. Verse 13, in the lips of him that hath understanding, wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. The second word translated understanding is not being. It's that word lab. It's the concept of the heart. Well, it wouldn't make sense if we translated it as a rod is for the back of him that is void of heart, until we understand the real meaning of this Hebrew word lab that's so often translated heart, but here it's translated understanding. And it's the idea of the center of a person, the kernel or core of a person. We've talked about this extensively in this class. And one of the key principles that has to be derived from the book of Proverbs is I decide my identity. I decide who I am. I decide what my center is. What is your center? Who are you? The book of Proverbs does not endorse the idea of I'm trying to discover myself. The book of Proverbs puts forth the idea of decide who you are. Proverbs 6, the point was made that he that committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding, lacketh heart. He doesn't know who he is. So many people will engage in sin because they've not decided who they are. They do not have a core or a center. They've not decided, I'm going to follow a higher standard than that. I'm going to be better than that. Who are you? Because when I don't know who I am, when I've not decided that I'm going to be the person God wants me to be, when I've not chosen the identity that God would have me to pursue, a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. The one that really doesn't know who he is, hasn't decided who he's going to be, is probably only going to learn things the hard way. A rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. Now keep in mind, this is in the context of the results of what we have to say. Lips, mouth, tongue. A rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. In other words, his mouth is writing checks that his back is going to have to cash. What he has to say, because he doesn't know who he is and hasn't decided that he's going to live by a higher standard, is bringing about the punishment that's the only way he's ever going to learn anything. Question: are we wise enough to learn from punishment? Are we wise enough to learn from those instances when our words have brought about the negative, the distasteful, the unpleasant? Elsewhere in the book of Proverbs, the point is made that a wrathful man shall suffer punishment, and if you deliver him, you must do it again. There are some folks who just don't learn. And if they are saved from hardship, well, they're just going to get themselves back into trouble. Come back to Proverbs 10, verse 13. A rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. If we've opened our mouths in a way that now our backs have to cash the check, will we learn from it? Or do we find our mouths getting us into the same problem next week, or the next day, or in the next conversation? There are Christians that need to hear this. There are Christians that need to look in the mirror and say, I have decided who I'm going to be. And I'm going to be a person that invests in duct tape until the things that come out of my mouth are the things that ought to be coming out of my mouth. Until I'm no longer stirring up gossip. Until I'm no longer deriding and denigrating. Until I'm no longer a negative Nancy or a depressive Dan. I'm going to choose a different course of speech. Verse 14. Wise men lay up knowledge, but the mouth of foolish is near destruction. Put the emphasis on the word knowledge. Wise men lay up not riches, although Wise men will practice good stewardship. Wise men lay up not weapons, although the wise is going to be prudent in regard to dangers. Wise men lay up knowledge. Lay up, store up, keep it preserved. I don't have to tell everything I know. This verse in and of itself is a sermon. John the Baptizer didn't tell everything he knew. You read John chapter 1, and when the Jews came to John the Baptizer saying, "Are you the Christ?" Nope. "Are you that prophet?" Nope. "Are you Elijah that should come?" Nope. Now wait a minute. Jesus would tell Peter, James, and John as they descended from that mountain of transfiguration, Matthew 17, that Elijah has truly come, and they did whatever they wanted to him because they didn't know him. And Peter, James, and John understood that Jesus was speaking of John the Baptizer. Jesus said that John the Baptizer was the fulfillment of that prophecy, Elijah that is for to come. Yet when the Jews asked John the Baptizer, "Are you Elijah?" Nope. Well, did he lie? No, he understood that wise men lay up knowledge. I don't have to share everything I know. And when the question that people are asking is being asked based upon their misunderstanding and then their desire to misuse information that, frankly, they're not capable of handling, I'm not obligated to convey information that doesn't belong to them. John the Baptizer didn't lie. He just answered on their terms. No, he was not literally Elijah, which was what they were anticipating. Wise men lay up knowledge. Jesus would tell his apostles in John 16, "I have many other things to say unto you, but you cannot bear them now." Wise men lay up knowledge. I don't have to share everything that I know. But we're a bunch of diggers. How often do we ask people questions and then we watch their reaction? And we assume an answer based on whether or not they're willing to answer. How dare we? Some things are none of my business. That's why there are some questions I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to ask you if you have more or less than $20,000 in your bank account because it's not my business. And there are a host of other questions that are not my business. Some are far more personal. Some are more mundane. But the point we need to make here is this. We can understand in some aspects and regards that we don't have to share everything that we know. Can we understand in certain aspects and regards that other people don't have to share everything that they know with us? And people do not have to feel obligated to share information with me just because I asked about it? Especially if I'm one of those rumor mill individuals that's trying to do some investigating so that I can have just a little bit more in my arsenal to flap my gabber. Wise men lay up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. Wise men realize that there are some things that if they share, it's going to be a detriment, not only to themselves. The people that only hide information because they're going to be detrimental to themselves are more often than not lying. No, wise men lay up knowledge not just for their own good, but for the good of everyone. But the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. Threatens destruction is how another source translates it. The mouth of the foolish is flirting with disaster. Willing to say whatever, not worried about the consequences, not until they hit. Now, isn't that interesting? Consequences and repercussions for what the mouth of the foolish has to say. You think that might connect in any way to what was said in verse 13? A rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. So now, there's a connection. The foolish, the word translated foolish is that kasil, there's an evil in his foolishness. He's not just dumb or nitwitted. This is the foolish that is of moral indiscretion. The mouth of the foolish is near destruction. Punishment or a rod is for the back of him that's void of understanding. These two are living under the same category, on the same street, maybe in the same house and in the same body. The one that doesn't know who he is and he's foolish. Verse 15, the rich man's wealth is his strong city. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. Pause. Is there a connection between this verse and the preceding? You know, the word destruction seems to be a connection. But consider, if you will, the rich man's wealth is his strong city. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. This idea is conveyed elsewhere. Look at Proverbs 18:11. Proverbs 18:11, the rich man's wealth is his strong city and is a high wall in his own conceit. There, the idea, the rich man is putting trust in his riches and a high wall in his own conceit. That's not necessarily a good thing. At the same time, it's not necessarily a bad. Proverbs 10:15. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. Let's connect that with Proverbs 15:15. Flip over there for just a second. All the days of the afflicted are evil, but he that is of a merry heart hath a continual feast. Now, question. All the days of the afflicted are evil. Is this a declaration of a universal fact? Those that are afflicted, all their days are evil. They've just got it so bad. Or is it a description of perspective? You ask the afflicted how he's doing, and guess what kind of day he's having? All the days of the afflicted are evil. There are some folks, no matter what's taking place that day, hey, how you doing? Something's going to be wrong. There's a sister down in New Orleans, and we loved her dearly, but we had to learn her, and she had to learn us. And there was one occasion, every time you asked how she's doing, she had a complaint. So one day Melissa said, hey, how's your foot? She said, oh, my foot's fine. Why? Oh, well, at least something's good about you. Well, there are some folks that need greeted about like that. Hey, how's your left pinky? My left pinky's fine. Why? Well, good. There's something good going for you. Because otherwise you say, hey, how you doing? Oh, blah, 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 blah. Yes, there are times when we're having bad days. We need to talk about them. But all the days of the afflicted are evil. Every day is a bad day. It's describing perspective. Contrast, he that is of a merry heart hath a continual feast. Bring that back to Proverbs 10:15. The rich man's wealth is his strong city. Is this a declaration of fact? Or is it a description of perspective? The rich man's wealth is his strong city. He sees a sense of protection, safety, security. Do we ever hear terms like financial security? Rather frequently, right? To the point that how many people are pursuing financial security? Didn't see any hands raised. Nobody in here at all, huh? The rich man's wealth is his strong city. There's a certain sense in which we view wealth as a security blanket, a safety net. It's not necessarily wrong. Because those that are, depending on how much income we've put back, depending on what kind of financial decisions we've made, we're able to absorb some difficult times better than others. Proverbs 10:15, the destruction of the poor is their poverty. Their downfall is their poverty. Well, why are they poor? The verse doesn't say. It's a simple perspective that's being described here. And maybe the perspective ought to supply a challenge for us. Do we put too much trust in riches? Do we put too much stock in poverty? Please understand, there are times when the destruction of the poor is their poverty and it's their own fault. Have you ever done the math regarding Egypt in the days of Joseph? For 7 years, they had plenty. Pharaoh had that dream. 7 good ears of corn, 7 lean ears ate them. 7 good kine cattle, 7 bad kine ate them. Joseph interpreted the dream. 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. Think about the math. Who remembers what portion of their fruits and their income was collected over the course of the 7 good years in order to prepare for the 7 years of famine? 1/5. That's 20%. Now think about this. For those 7 years of plenty, 1/5 was submitted to Pharaoh so as to store up, to have the minimum to get folks through the 7 years of famine. And frankly, it was more than the minimum. That means that they kept 4/5. That's 80%. They kept 4 times as much as what was going to be needed to get them through the years of famine. Which means they could have taken a quarter of that, 1/5, doubled it, 2/5, and put the other 2/5 back and lived high on the hog for 14 straight years. But who remembers how many years into the famine it was before every Egyptian was broke as a Joe? 1 year. And they come to Pharaoh saying, buy our land, buy our cattle, buy us. Why? Because they had 4 times as much as they needed for 7 straight years, and they blew it all. It was gone. They had America's wealth management system. Financial security, right? Yet they had 4 times as much as they needed and they were living paycheck to paycheck. A rich man's wealth is his strong city. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. There are those that are poor not because of any decisions they've made. There are those that are poor because of poor decisions they've made. When we look at Proverbs 10:15, it's not describing the moral condition of the rich or the poor. It's not describing how they got to their wealth or to the absence thereof. Proverbs 10:15 is simply describing a matter of perspective that we well understand, and we would do well to step back and think, wait a minute, am I putting too much stock in riches? Am I putting too much stock in poverty? Or am I putting the proper stock in making wise decisions so as not to rely on wealth, but to use it as a tool? Jesus would say, make friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, Luke 16. In other words, use wealth and funds in a wise way. The rich man's wealth is his strong city. They tend to be confident because of their funds. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. They tend to see their poverty as what brings about their destruction. And at times it is. So, encouragement for wise decisions financially? Absolutely. Encouragement for having a sense of sympathy for those who are dealing with poverty and perhaps they didn't bring it upon themselves, and now every time they face hard times, it hits them harder? Absolutely. Verse 16, the labor of the righteous tendeth to life, the fruit of the wicked to sin. The labor of the righteous tendeth to life. His works, his efforts, tends toward sustaining life, his and others. The fruit of the wicked just brings about the negatives, to sin. Now, keep in mind that this is in the context of the things we have to say. So connect Proverbs 10:16 with Proverbs 12:14. A man shall be satisfied with good by the fruit of his mouth. Do the things we have to say ever have an impact on our income? Dale Carnegie made the following observation. In looking at those who made the most money in their respective fields, particularly describing engineering, he said those that on average make the most in the field of engineering are not those who are the best engineers. They're those who know how to deal with people. Well, those who know how to deal with people tend to know how to choose the right words. They know how to interact. They know how to exercise wisdom when it comes to interpersonal relationships. A man shall be satisfied with good by the fruit of his mouth, and the recompense of a man's hand shall be rendered unto him. Could it be that Proverbs 10:16, the labor of the righteous tendeth to life, the fruit of the wicked to sin, that this can even refer not just to their physical labors and the works of their hands, but since the mouth of the righteous is what's so strongly under consideration in this series of verses, could there be an exhortation here that when we watch our mouths, our efforts are more effective? And that's going to be true in evangelism. It's going to be true when it comes to the work of the church and edifying brethren. But it's also true in the workplace, and it's going to be true in the home. One more verse, verse 17. He is in the way of life that keepeth instruction, but he that refuseth reproof erreth. This verse likewise doesn't have as much to say about what we say. It focuses on whether or not we'll hear. He is in the way of life that keepeth instruction. Life. The previous verse, the labor of the righteous tends to life. There's a focus on life here. He is in the way of life that keepeth instruction. Will I allow instruction to guide me? Will I listen to those who tell me a better way to do something? Am I willing to hear and consider? He that refuseth reproof erreth. In the middle of these verses regarding the things we have to say, there is a verse asking whether or not we're willing to hear. It's been said that we've been given one mouth and two ears so that we'll listen twice as much as we speak. I suppose there's something to that. Instead of focusing so much on what we have to say, maybe if we would focus on listening, we'd be better equipped to say the right thing more frequently. We'll pick up here in September, or actually in August when we return to our study of Proverbs. We'll resume Proverbs 10. But for now, thank you for your kind attention.